southern Germany has been hit by relating after a violent hailstorm battered Bavaria, shattered with windows, damaged rooftops, and living residents standing by the scale of destruction. The storm swept across the region with little warning, unleashing hailstones the large of tennis balls. Streets in Munich, Augsburg, and surrounding towns were carpeted in ice, with the cars were left dented with white shifts smashed. It was like gunfire from the sky, said Klaus Richter, a resident of Augsburg. A hospital treated dozens of people to their cars, burst, and hit injuries. Children and elderly were most affected, with the emergency responded rushing to provide shelter in a school and a sports hall in the rural area. The storm was equally devastated. Groups of Borsay, maize, and a vineyard across Bavaria were pumped, with the farmers reported losses that could total tens of millions of euros. Transport ground to the hail, trains were delayed, stock were blocked, fallen branches and debris were fighted for Munich airport were disrupted due to damaged aircraft and poor visibility. Highway torn hazards with the multiple accidents caused the slippery and ice-covered roads. Tourists were also cut off in the chaos. Visitors to Neuschwanstein Castle and Bavaria, farmers' Alpine village showed a dramatic image for the hail building up for the snowdrifts, with local accompanying the summer storm to the winter blizzards. Meteorologists explained that the hailstorm was triggered by unstoppable air masses, colliding the southern Germany, intensified by record summer heat. Climate experts warn that extreme hail events are becoming more frequent across the Europe, pressing homes, agriculture, and infrastructure under increasing threat. Farmers in Lower Saxony reported devastation, losses in their crops and greenhouses, and about destroyed it. Insurance experts warned that the damage could be cost millions, placing an additional body and economic elderly and person. Germany Chancellor Olaf Scholz expressed condolences of the family to the victims and promised swift federal aid. "We stand together in the face of this catastrophe," he said, adding the climate adaptation must become a national priority. Meteorologists warn the storm and the magnitude may become more frequent as a warning season to call unstoppable weather across North Europe. At a time, rescue operations continue in flooded town in the mountains valley, with the soldiers, firefighters, and volunteers working side by side. For many Germans, in storm will be remembered not only the force but a stark reminder of the growing risk of climate change. A powerful Atlantic storm swept across much of Europe, bringing hurricane-force winds, torrential rain, and chaos in several countries, from the Atlantic coast of France and inland cities in Germany. Millions of people forced transport disruption, and emergency service worked at full capacity. In France, will gas exceeded 115 km/h, knocked down trees, cut power to more than 400,000 homes, and forced several airports to close. It sounded like a fire train was passing through our streets, said Louis Martin, the resident of Brittany, where routes are blocked overnight. Southern Germany was hit by severe flooding when rivers burst at their banks. In Bavaria, rescue evacuated dozens of residents by boat after the local dam threatened to overflow. "We never seen the water rise too fast," explained it firefighters Karl Neumann. Rail service in the region remains severely disrupted. In the Netherlands, authorities temporarily closed its section to famous Afsdijk dam due to fear and a coastal wave. Meanwhile, Poland and Czech Republic reported widespread hailstorm that severely damaged cars and crops. Central Europe was not less affected. In Switzerland and Austria, transport was paralyzed. Train were stopped due to landslides and flights were cancelled in Zurich and Vienna. In Poland, emergency service received hundreds of calls and trees blocked major highways and power lines fell. Meteorologists explained the storm traced the collision to the warm Mediterranean air with a cold Arctic front, which according to one expert created perfect conditions to the storm. Climatologist Marcus Keller warned, such extreme weather not longer a rarity. They are becoming a new norm. At least 20 people have been reported dead and hundreds injured across Europe. Tens of thousands of people remain without electricity. European leaders have promised to provide aid and fund to recovery, but it could take weeks to rebuild. For many, this night of destruction will be forever etched to their memories. As one of the Munich residents said, Europe has seen storms before, but never have so much countries have been hit so hard at the same time. A wave of intense hailstorms swept across Europe, leaving behind broken roofs, destroyed troops and devastating communities from Italy to Germany, France and Poland. Meteorologists described the event as one of the strongest hailstorms in the recent years, caused by collisions of cold southern air and a fast-moving cold front that swept across the continent. In Italy, especially the areas around Rome and Emilia-Romagna, the storm was accompanied by thunderstorm winds and hailstones the size of walnuts, which pelted cars and roofs and a thunderstorm roof. In a matter of seconds, it was winter, said local residents Luca De Santis. The streets turned white, we could hardly see anything. Several motorists were stranded off ice-blocked drainage system, flooded tunnels and city roads. Further north in Bavaria, Germany, the storm caused chaos in communities near the Munich and Augsburg. Cars were damaged, trees were uprooted and public transport was halted. Local authorities received more than 1,200 emergency calls in a few hours. Paris, France, the hit of European most iconic city through the interdiary as a violent overnight storm battered Paris and surrounding suburbs, leaving behind the trail of destruction rarely seen in modern times. The violent tempest driven by the deep Atlantic pressure system unleashed a torrential rainfall, differing thunder and hurricane-force winds, plunged parts of the capital in the darkness and the chaos. According to the Meteor of France, Paris endured record-breaking rainfall more than 16 mm in just 4 hours, flooding entire districts including said German Despel, Baseline and Latic Water. The city again drainage networks strategically to cope, tuning cobblestone streets into fast-moving rivers. It was terrifying, said Claire Depot, who lives near Jared the Lion. Within a minute, water was knee-deep. Cars were flooding. The lighting was so bright it felt like it driving for a second. Authorities reported over 1,800 emergency calls, with firefighters rescuing dozens trapped in the basements and underground car park. In Germany, the state of Bavaria and North Rhine-Westphalia were hit hard. Rail services were suspended in several regions after fallen trees damaged overhead lines, with the schools remaining closed in precipitation. Dutch Brown warning passengers in significant delays in cancellation. Meteorologists attributed the extreme weather and deep Atlantic low-pressure system golden with the unstoppably warm continental air and volatile mix and intensified the storm power. Dr. Elena Rossi from the European Climate Observatory stated, "We have witnessed more frequent and violent weather patterns to shift atmospheric circulated linking to climate change." The storm also caused coastal surge in Netherlands and Belgium. The authority reinforced and flood buried out along the vulnerable zone. In Amsterdam, channels overflowing, forcing evacuation in low-lying districts. Airports across Europe, including Frankfurt, Paris channels, and Madrid, Belgium, reported flight cancellation and diversions, extended thousands of traveling overnight. Meanwhile, firefighters from all over Italy were sent to reinforce refuse force. Social media is flooded with images and dramatic rescue operations. Children begin lifted from rooftops, elderly people begin to carry out throughout the waist-deep water, and pain being saved from the daunting. The hashtag Sicilia Aqua were become popular throughout the country. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni expressed solidarity with the region, promised no community will be left without the help. "We will rebuild our support every affected family." Experts warn that the Mediterranean region is becoming increasingly vulnerable to such storm. In the recent report by European Environmental Agency, Sicily was identified as a climate hotspot facing rising sea levels, heat waves, and now extreme rainfall. As the sky begins to clear, attention turned to recover. Damage assessment, no ongoing to questions are being raised about the urban planning, drainage system, and early warning protocols. But familiar Sicilians healing will take no longer. As a Giulia Manga, whose home was destroyed, it said with the tears here years. "We survived but not lost everything. Now we have started all over again." In dramatic turn of events, Sicily finds itself if those in unprecedented storm as nature unleashed any pure upon the picturesque Italian island. We burst of the exclusive coverage and meteorological spectacle deletion the impact of communities, infrastructure, and the environment. As the storm approached Sicily, among the clouds gathering heralding the tempest to unparalleled proportions. Coastal area forced to onslaught the fierce winds and torrential rains, leading the widespread flooding in challenging conditions to both residents to emergency service. Our on-the-ground reported paint a vivid picture to havoc wreaked by the storm. The city of Palermo was transformed into rivers and water levels served submerged cars and tested to resilience to floodedness. The historic architecture with it stood the test time to the faces of relentless onslaught of the wind of rain. Throughout the island, communities are grappling with the power outage, and the storm force causes significant damage to electrical infrastructure. Emergency shelters have been opened to provide refuge to those displaced by the storm. In just a few hours, some areas received more rainfall than they normally do into entire month. Schools and government official and affected areas were closed to precautions and civil protection until the disrupted assist the damage and assist in cleanup. In Palermo, several unprecedented were flooded rapid cars and landslides were reported in town located on hills. Experts warned that such intense and frequent storms could become a normal in southern Italy. Climatologists are urging authorities and citizens to strengthen infrastructure and emergency preparedness on the Mediterranean region continue to face the worsened effect of global warming. As Sicily begins the cleanup, the storm severs and not yet another stark reminder on a growing instability of the nature and urgent need to action to ensure environmental sustainability.
Yo creo que nunca nunca he visto una cosa así, ¿vale?
Several European countries are assessing the damage after severe hailstorm swept across the continent, leaving a trail of destruction from France and Italy to Germany, Austria and Switzerland. The storm intensified the unstoppable air masses that collided over Central Europe, produced hailstones the size of a tennis ball that mashed a car, damaged roofs and injured hundreds of people. In northern Italy, cities in Lombardy and Veneto saw streets covered in ice and hospitals treated dozens and partying for cars in a heat injury caused by broken glass. In Bavaria, Germany, cars were left covered in dents and vineyards suffered catastrophic damage. It was like bombing, saying Hans Killer, a farmer's near Munich. In 10 minutes, our entire harvest were destroyed. Austria, also facing chaos in emergency service, responded to collapsed roofs and blocked highways. In Switzerland, tourists in Lorenz and Alps scalped dramatic footage in hailstorms, spilled it up like snowdrifts, transformed summer landscape in winter owns. Flights in Zurich and Geneva airports were delayed and cancelled after hail-damaged parked planes. Meteorologists said the storm was caused by the collisions between the Mediterranean air and the cold northern front, exactly than the recorded summer heat across Europe. Scientists warn that climate change is contributed to more frequent and destructive hailstorms, and in the continent growing climate-related problems. Agriculture has been hit hardest, heat damaged estimates of hundreds and millions of euros. Vineyard, orange and cornfield across Central Europe has been destroyed, threatening both in local economy and a food supply chain. Insurance companies are already preparing for one of the most expensive weather events in the year. Government has promised to provide assistance and clean up on the aftermath and the initial disaster by sending soldiers in a rural area to clear roads and protect damaged homes from the further rain. However, for the many residents, the storm was stuck remaining in the increasing severity of extreme weather events. Istanbul was hit by a sudden and severe hailstorm that turned a bustling metropolis into a scene of chaos and destruction. The storm, which lasted less than an hour, brought hailstones the size of a golf ball, smashed windows, damaged cars and injured dozens of people who were outdoors. The city streets were quickly covered with a white layer of hail, with a blockade and severe and causing sudden flooding. Major highways, including Bosphor Bridge, were paralyzing and cars were unable to drive through the city's sewers. Public transport was severely disrupted. Tram lines were blocked and ferry service across the strait were suspended. Istanbul International Airport also reported delays after runways were brilliantly covered in hail. Emergency service responded there hundreds of calls, rescuing people trapped in their cars and clearing collapsing owners and a heat collapsing under the weight of hail. Hospitals treated dozens of people and cars and a heat injuries, and authorities confirmed at least 2 deaths related to this storm. Residents described a sense of panic. It felt like a sky was falling. The noise of hail falling on the roof was different. In a matter of minutes, our streets looked like a had snowed, said Ais Demir, a shop owner in Cadio. Video posted online showed buses stuck knee-deep in the water and trees blocked by the force of the storm. Agriculture in the surrounding Marmara region suffered significant damage. Vineyard and orange were damaged, threatening in the harvest and local livelihood. Insurance companies are already estimated the damage of tens of millions of euros. As the sun rose over the devastation streets, scenes of resilience began to emerge. Volunteers from neighboring towns arrived the shovels, pumps, and food supplies. In Catania University, standard formed human chain to help clear debris to home of elderly residents. Church bells rang in solidarity of many communities, helped nightly prayers to injure and displace it. One image of West Sicily flag flying proudly over the flooded town hall became a national symbol of strength. Local media called it a room and declared a state of emergency to obtain additional funds in the rescue to rapid reconstruction. Engineers are now installing bridges and roads, help workers to warn into possible communication flow to overflows, seen and standing water. Meteorologists at Veneto, Italy say a storm system may be reckoning the residual rains and extended to continue for several more days. The ground is standing with the water. Warning climatologist Dr. Elena Rossi events tell additional rainfall could cause new floods and landslides. Environmental activists are calling this storm a wake-up call. This is not just a random error, said Lucia Marinel of Climate Italia. This is the result of decades of neglecting environmental policy of urban planning. We must change now. International support has begun to arrive in the form of offer assistance from the European Union of neighboring countries. Italian celebrities, soccer players, and Pope have been experiencing this solidarity. Culture representative warned that the addition of psychological storm urged me to adapt to climate change were needed to prevent Sicily identified a tourist economy. This is a symbol act of unity in the consulate across the Sicily. Roundbell Cemetery as noon Tuesday, a moment of silence of victims is signs trying to serious. Sicily and no stranger to hardship. From the earthquake to volcanic eruption, they have endured a lot, but this storm, many say, was different, not just a natural disaster but climate warning. Should the wind and the water. The storm also suffered the European transport network. Rail service hit in Germany and France suffered severe disruption, while airport in Milan, Brussels and Prague experienced significant delay. Trucks were banned from the driving in some area Italy due to dangerous crosswalks. Meteorologists warn that climate change may be felt to intensify of this storm. We are seeing more frequent and violent weather events across Europe, said Dr. Hans Keller, a climate scientist in Berlin. European leaders pledged to carry off rapid relief force. France deployed military engineers to clear blocked roads, while Germany announced emergency funds to support reconstruction efforts. EU officials trusted to need a get continental cooperation to deal with the climate-related disaster. For millions of people across Europe, this storm was not just a night to extreme weather, but another stark reminder of the continent's growing vulnerability to the fury of nature.
Grandina tutto, nebbia d'acqua, non si capisce niente.
A sudden and severe hailstorm swept across southern Poland, leaving scene of destruction in its wake and prompted urgent calls to help. The storm, which struck on a Monday evening, battered towns and villages with a hailstone the size of walnuts, smashing windows, damaged cars, and distorted crops in the middle of the harvest season. Farmers in the Motopolska and Pontcampaccia region reported catastrophic losses. In the 10 minutes, everything he had worked in the year was destroyed, said Porent Novak, a farmer from the near Tarnow. The fields looked as someone had chopped them up with the knives. Agriculture representative estimate that hundreds of hectares of corn, potatoes and orange have been destroyed, with the could lead higher food prices in the coming month. Residents described chaos and the hail-pounded roofs and a blanket rain caused sudden flooding in the city streets. Emergency service responded to hundreds of calls, and a fire crews worked through the night, including debris and secure damaged homes. Fortunately, no deaths were reported, although several people suffered minor injuries from the broken glass. Local authorities are assessing the damage with estimated to be tens of millions of euros. The Polish Meteorological Institute was warned for the Celtic cold more storms in the coming days are unstoppable weather continue to prevail in Central Europe. Climatologists note in the frequency of such extreme weather events in increasing. Hailstorms of this intensity used to be a rare phenomenon, but climate change is affecting weather conditions across the continent, said Dr. Marta Zelinska and the climatologist of University of Warsaw. For many, recovery will be long and difficult. We will build everything, but it seems that nature is tasting other more year, said resident Anna Kowalska, standing near the destroyed greenhouse.
Guardate ragazzi! Guardate un po'! Guardate un po' ragazzi! Sono un amico!
Oh ragazzi, questo è l'ipercorso.
Rome was hit a sudden and violent hailstorm that turned a cobbled streets into the city rivers and shocking residents. The storm, which hit during the evening rush hour, brought golf-sized ball hailstones, torrential rain and strong winds of the city caused significant disruption and damage. When the minutes measured through the faces, such as Via del Corso, were covered in ice, bringing traffic at standstill. Cars were damaged, white ships were shattered and motorcyclists were forced to abandon their vehicles. It was like a bombardment of stones from the sky, said Marco De Santis, who took shelter in the cafe where the storm reached. Public transport were paralyzed, several metro stations were flooded and tram service were suspended. At Fiumicino Airport, flights were delayed after the runway were covered with slush and ground stamped roads to clear the debris. The city's historic landmark also suffered significant damage from the storm. Tourists took shelter under the arches of Colosseum and up its antient area to layers into ice-accumulated steps to Spanish stamps and Pisa, Venice. Emergency service rushed to protect archaeological sites, fearing the water seepage could damage the fragile structures. Hospitals reported dozens of injuries, mostly from the slipped on the ice sidewalks or being stuck on fallen bridges. Power outage left thousands of homes in darkness. In the flash floods inundated underground parking lots of basements in low-lying areas such as Testorial and Tuscany. Meteorologists explained that the storm formed that the warm Mediterranean air collided with the cold front moving south from northern Europe, creating strong updrafts that caused unusually large hailstorms. Experts warn that due to climate change, such extreme weather events are becoming more frequent and intense throughout Italy. We are dealing with a widespread roof damage and power outage, said Bavarian Fire Chief Markus Keller, who described the situation as apocalyptic. In southern France, vineyard and orange severely damaged, with some region exploded, reported a total loss of crops. Farmers in province of Rhone-Alpes region experienced a disaster after huge hailstones destroyed their vineyards. The storm took everything. Laminate Winmark Palt Gerard, the harvest we have been waiting for all year, is gone. In Central and Eastern Europe, hailstorm intensified. In Poland, the city of Krakow was hit by torrential rain, with freezing rain that flooded streets and damaged cars. In Austria, large hailstorms caused flights, delays, and forced airports the closed temperatures. Meteorologists attributed this storm weather is unstable atmospheric layers, which are intensified due to global warming. Europe is now experiencing for more connective storms, phenomena accompanied by supercell lightning and giant hailstorms, explained Dr. Petra Long in European Meteorological Observatory. This is not a longer rarity, is becoming part of new normal. Authorities across the continent continue to assess the damage, warning the future determination in weather conditions, while cleanup crews work to repair the damage caused by the ice storm. Many residents describe the surreal scene, summer streets transformed into winter landscape in a matter of minutes.
Le macchine se ne sono andate, sono volate. Madre de Dios. Su, que desastre. Mira.
As Sicily slowly begins to dry up, the real lesson of the storm is being recovered not only in blizzards but also in dialogue and the growing average in the Mediterranean Sea. One of the candle ice calm sea is sunny skies is becoming of the epicenter of the climate disaster. Experts call this a turning point to the urge Southern European government is invest in the climate resilience. Coastal cities such as Palermo and Catania, densely populated, are reaching a cultural heritage, particularly vulnerable to rising sea levels, increasing rainfall to heat waves. The Mediterranean Sea is warming 20% faster than the global average, said Dr. Elena Rossi, the climate researcher of University of Rome. This storm was not a fluke. This is part of the trend we are seeing more intense, more frequent, more destructive. International observers from UNESCO have experienced concerns about Sicily historical monuments, many of which were flooded or damaged during this storm. The Brockway tributaries of Noto and ancient Greek ruins are still nude, and new parts of the parts surrounding Mount Etna were affected. The Italian island of Ischia near Naples have been devastated by powerful flood and landslides triggered by relentless rainfall. Torrents of water swept through the town, tearing apart flood, burying homes, smote, and leaving residents in shock at the state of destruction. In the town of Casamicciola Terme, one of the hardest hit era, houses were engulfed by the cascading mud and debris. It was like avalanches of water and earth cascading down, said Rosa Espana, a resident who narrowly escaped with her family. In a seconds, everything we owned goes down. Authorities confirmed multiple deaths, with the several people still missing as such, and the rescue operations continue. Dozens of residents were injured, while hundreds and evacuation from the unstable buildings. Schools, shops, and businesses remain closed as emergency crews clear blocked streets. Emergency snow cars overturned and a half buried, with the rescue workers and volunteers did through their layers of mud with their hands to reach service. Power outage and damaged water supplies have left many communities isolated. The island's still terrain combined with the days of heavy rain triggered a series of landslides that shut down mountains into the coastal town. Experts noted that devastation and uncontrolled construction have worsened island's vulnerability to such disaster. Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni experienced condolences to victim families and pledged immediate aid, calling the disaster a national tragedy. Italian Civil Protection Agency has deployed helicopters, driver, and special units to assist rescue force, with the local authority declared a state of emergency. The flood has also remained wider concern. Each popular tourist destination known for the hot spring and bridge is now facing questions about building safety and climate resilience. This was an unexceptional weather event, said Franco Delit, spokesman of French National Meteorological Service, Meteo France. The storm formed rapidly over the Atlantic and intensified it as it reached the Paris basin, a pattern we have seen more often due to rising sea surface temperatures. Paris Mayor Ana Hidalgo urged residents to remain caution, warning they feel the storm forecast in the coming days. We are facing the realities of the climate change, she said. Our city must strengthen the drainage system and emergency infrastructure. As the drone broke, Paris woke a scene of chaos, flooded metro assistant, trenches, debris streets, and smelled the wet stone rising from the historic ruins. Yet, when the damage many experienced relief, the scene of the remained below critical flood levels. Paris was seen centuries of the storm, said local historian Jean-Luc Bernard. But each time we are reminded no beauty and frugality walk hard in the city. The Spanish region of Valencia has been hit by a severe storm that has brought torrential rain, violent winds, and severe flooding, leaving streets submerged and continues gradually to recover. Meteorologists say a system filled the moisture by Mediterranean dumped more than 200 mm of rain in just 24 hours, one of the most intense downpours in decades. Entire neighborhoods in the city of Valencia were left underwater, and the residents were forced to wade through waist-deep water. Emergency service carried out hundreds of rescue, including drivers trapped in submerged cars and families evacuated from ground floor apartments. At least 4 fatalities have been confirmed, while dozens of people have been injured by falling debris and traffic incidents. The part of Valencia, one of the barriers in Europe, was temporarily closed after a crane that knocked down by strong winds disrupted shipments across the Mediterranean. Public transport was brought in a standstill, subway lines were suspended, flights were diverted, and rail services were cancelled throughout the region. The Italian city of Palermo was left in shock after the severe storm swept through the Sicilian capital, bringing torrential rain, hurricane-force winds and flash floods that paralyzed the city. Within hours, streets turned into raging rivers, swept away across the trapped residents in their homes. Emergency services were inundated with the cold, rescued dozens of people from flooded cars in the basement. It was like a waterfall rushing throughout the streets, said a local shopkeeper. Describe it now if the store was destroyed in minutes. Hospitals reported an influx of potent safety from the injured and hypothermia, although it confirmed several casualties and thousands of people were left without power as the power lines collapsed under the weight of fallen trees. The city's historic districts, usually bustling with the tourists, were eerily empty as residents hid in their homes. The storm also disrupted vital infrastructure. Palermo Airport temporarily suspended flights and ferry services were halted due to wave crashed onto the coast. In rural area around the city, farmland was destroyed onto olive groves and vineyards were flooded, raising fears of significant losses to agriculture. Meteorologists said the storm was intensified by the warm water of the Mediterranean Sea, which follow unstable air masses. Conditions likely to the border effects of the climate change. Italy's Civil Protection Agency warned that extreme weather conditions are becoming the new normal and they call it to immediate investment to flood protection and the early warning system. Local authorities declared a state of emergency and the government promising to allocate funds to deal with the aftermath of the national disaster. Volunteers joined to brigade the police to clear blocked roads, but recovery expected to take weeks to even months. Madrid has been plunged into chaos after a powerful storm swept across the Spanish capital, bringing torrential rain, gale force winds and a flash flooding that left entire neighborhoods underwater. In just few hours, more than a month was in rain, overwhelming drainage and transformed streets into fast-flowing rivers. Cars were swept away, metro station flooded, and power lines collapsed, plunging parts of the city in darkness. "It was terrified," said Lauza Fernandez, a shop assistant who was received from the standard car. "The water rose so quickly, I thought I would make it out alive." Authorities confirmed several fatalities and dozens of injured. Hundreds of residents were evacuated from basements in low-lying homes, and emergency service working around the clock, often wading chest deep through the floodwaters. Public transportation suffered severe disruption. Madrid metro network were particularly shut, while train and buses forced long delays. Barras International Airport suspended flight for several hours, stranded passengers amidst scenes of confusion. Tourists were also caught in the chaos, with landmarks like Puerta del Sol and Plaza Major submerged. Videos shared online showed hailstones bouncing across historic squares and water pouring down the steps of the Prada Museum. In surrounding region, farmland was badly hit. Vineyards and olive groves were inundated just weeks before harvest, threatening significant agricultural losers. Economists warned the storm financial toll could run into hundreds of millions of euros. Meteorologists explained that the storm was triggered by a clash between humid Mediterranean air and cold Atlantic front intensified by record summer heat. Experts warn that climate change is increasing to frequency such extreme weather events across Spain, already one of Europe's most climate vulnerable nations.